What Islamophobia is doing is causing Americans to back away from constitutional principles and the laws that we have on the books. One example, in 2010, Oklahoma passed a bill that specifically forbade judges in that state from considering Islamic religious principles and rulings. So if I had gotten married under Islamic law and I had promised my wife a certain amount of money as part of our arrangement, and then later we're getting divorced and I just didn't pay that money, my wife would have had no recourse to go to the courts to get what she was owed.
My name is Faraz Hamdani, and I am an American Muslim. As an American Muslim, I go to work. I enjoy spending time with my family, my friends, and going out to eat, just like any other American would. But then why is it that because of my faith, I'm the subject of so much discrimination, of questioning and mistrust, of outright animosity? Why is it that the current political landscape and media narrative pick such selective sound bites portraying only the most negative aspects they can about Islam? Why is it that I'm being forced to question my own position in the community that I've lived and grown up in? What is the history of Muslims in America? What are they doing today, and what does their future hold?
The first exposure to Muslims in America really dates back, really, to tell you the honest truth, back in the 9th century with the Chinese Muslim coming over here. But then you come into more of documented and records start appearing in the 1312. These West Africans made 2 journeys over here into the Western Hemisphere. Wound up going through the Mississippi, South America, Panama, Cuba, all these regions. Matter of fact, they say that they're the ones that gave them the name Honolulu and Hawaii are Islamic African names. And there's other reports. You find reports with Christopher Columbus when he arrived here, talking about seeing ruins over in Panama and Cuba of old masjids and old mosques. But even prior to that, you look at before Columbus came and before the fall of Granada, they thought the world was flat. It wasn't until 1492 when they found the maps at the fall of Granada that they went on a journey to travel and realized that Muslims was traveling, that the world wasn't flat, that the world was round.
Most scholars estimate that upwards of 45% of the enslaved Africans came from West Africa. That means their rituals, their traditions were rooted in that West African Islamic experience.
Then you got the town Muhammad, Illinois. Inside Muhammad, Illinois, they found tombstones with the 1 finger on it. Now, they don't want that name, Muhammad, Illinois. They tried to change it to Middletown, but there was already a town called Middletown, so they had to go back to calling it Muhammad. And it's in Champaign County, Illinois. It's the oldest county in Illinois. Matter of fact, there's reports that Abraham Lincoln spent the night in that town, Muhammad.
Before America was America, there was the Great Revolutionary War where the colonized Americans were fighting for their independence and freedom from Great Britain. Did you know that during that time there were many Muslim soldiers and leaders within the Revolutionary Army, one of which was Yusuf Ben Ali, who was then known as Joseph Ben Haley, and he fought alongside the general in battles down in South Carolina. We also have Bampit Muhammad, who was a corporal in the Revolutionary War in his army. His service records indicate a service date of almost 10 years. Here we have reproduced letters from the Sultan of Morocco acknowledging America as a country and establishing the first peace treaty America ever had with a country, and it happened to be a Muslim country. Here, walking through Arlington National Cemetery, I'm overcome with just the gravity of the number of graves and soldiers we see here, and surprised in a grateful way to see the number of Muslim graves amongst them all, as recent as the Iraq War, and Muslim graves dating back 200 years and more in previous wars up to the Civil War. And it's amazing to see just how intrinsically everyone, regardless of faith, has been involved in building and maintaining and defending the freedom of this country. Just overwhelming.
We have an obligation, and he was drawing from the words of Muhammad the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he said, if you are a citizen, whether you are a majority or a minority, but if you are a minority in a country that you claim citizenship in, you have an obligation. So what I'm saying, he got this from Muhammad the Prophet, peace be upon him. So he said, we have an obligation to support, defend, and protect our society. Now, when I joined the military, it wasn't popular to be a Muslim. I was in the military. I was working in a multi-service environment. There were migrants, maybe second, third generations, who were citizens now, working with us, protecting America's properties and protecting the forces. When I say the forces, the military members who were on the lands. Some of the members, when I say multi-service, I'm talking about Army, Navy, Marines, we were all working together in this department. Some of them began to make disparaging comments about the Muslims, the ones who were migrant and had the image of what they saw as being those who attacked us, the 9/11 figure. They were in that image. And I was always active as a Muslim, so they weren't towards me. People knew me, but I didn't, for some reason, they didn't target me, they targeted the other ones. And so the commander, they knew who I was, they knew I was a leader, and they asked me to do something about it. I put a document together, and I sent that to everybody's email, and with the commander's permission. And the first point on this document, just to get an idea of what was in the document that I sent, the first point on here was that at that time, President Bush, his #1 doctor, the doctor protecting our commander-in-chief, taking care of his health, that he entrusted his life to, was a Muslim. Huh? How about that?
Earlier today, we had an opportunity to visit the Supreme Court. I was very surprised that inside there's a large statue or tablet of prominent historical figures that have contributed to the lawmaking ideologies or theories that doctrine our own United States. Within this tablet was one sculpture of the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. Now, within the court, they've documented that these lawmakers, Napoleon, Confucius, Moses, and Muhammad, among many others, hold similar ideologies and faiths and beliefs into how the law of the land should be governed. Even more evident in historical figures and leaders like Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, both of whom are documented to have held copies of the Quran that they read frequently and were also diplomats to Muslim countries. Their experiences working with Muslims helped them to acknowledge that the common beliefs and ideologies shared with the Muslim faith and with the faith and freedom indoctrinated in the American Constitution are very, very similar. I am here at the Islamic Center of Washington in Washington, D.C., which opened its doors to the community in the late 1950s, where President Eisenhower himself, on these very steps, delivered an opening speech. In his speech, he said that the very fabric of the Constitution, of the American hearts and minds, was to be inclusive, accepting, and embodied the local Muslim and Islamic communities. President Eisenhower also said that for America and Americans to not accept and coexist with their Muslim brothers and sisters was to go against the very fabric of what America is and was intended to be. Throughout my time here in the nation's capital, I've learned a tremendous amount, not only about the history, but about the depth of integration of the Muslim community within America. From the 1300s to the 1500s, we've seen expeditions and explorers, Moors, Muslim Arabs, and Spanish Muslims who have come to this country. We saw a large emigration during the West African slave trade of Muslims that were brought to this country and were literate and highly educated. We've seen a development, continued emigration of Muslims from multiple nationalities and ethnicities, all coexisting, living in their local communities with peace and harmony. The Muslims we see in America today are largely integrated, contributing members of society. Well integrated not just in their local communities, but their national communities, and culturally aware of themselves and their neighbors. Although the current political landscape and media has painted quite a bleak picture of Muslims in America, with systematized and organized Islamophobia running rampant, We found in our discussions with local community members and leaders that the picture is not as bleak. Local Muslims share in ethnic diversity and are multilinguistic and multinational. But what they share and hold dearly in common is they are proud to be here in America and are proud law-abiding American citizens. As an American Muslim, I truly do hope that we can be and will be one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all, including Muslims.